Hello, guys. Hope everybody is here happy and your digestion is OK. I will try to do my best to be on the time. But first, I want to share something I'm passionate about. I love to travel. I have been traveling a lot, and I started when I was a kid with my parents, and I haven't stopped since. Altogether, I've been in 45 different countries. So maybe you've seen this kind of thing on Facebook, where you see people showing up about the place they've been. And I said, maybe I should try to do the same thing using Tableau. So I will start with a small demonstration. So what I've got here, I've got a data set that contains 3 columns that recap the country I've been, and for each country, whether I've been for vacation, for work, or actually live there, and then the number of weeks I've been spending in each country. Then, as you know, it's very easy to build a map in Tableau. You just double-click on the country, then you will double-click on the number of weeks, and then you will see these kind of things with the dots. But as you can see, there's 2 big dots, one in France, where I lived, and one smaller dot in Australia. So it's hard to see all the other places where I've been, because I'm only spending maybe 1 week or 2 weeks there. So to fix that, I can exclude basically the place where I have lived, a resident place, and now you can see that I've got a good spread out of the dots in the maps. But there's still one thing I don't like, is that the place of a dot is a bit random. It's happened to be in the middle of a country, which means that for Australia, it's in the middle of nowhere. So maybe what I should do here, I should try to do something else to make me also more impressive. What about creating a field map? So it's just 2 clicks away. You just need to put a color in. And now what you can see is that when you put the map like that, you can see that I've been in all continents except Antarctica. So it's quite big, quite impressive. But there's a few things I don't like. So for instance, if you have a look at Indonesia, it seems like I've been in all the islands of there, but actually I've only been to Bali, Lombok, and Sulawesi. The other thing I don't really like is that it's very hard to see all the tiny places in Europe. So for instance, I've been a bit in Malta, in Cyprus, in Luxembourg, and places like that. But they are too tiny to be seen on the screen. On the other hand, even though I've been only 1 week in Canada, it's hard to miss that I've been there, because Canada is massive. So I will stop my little demonstration here. And what I want to highlight is that when it comes to map, as the same thing that when it comes to over visualization in Tableau, there are mistakes that probably most people here may do. So the goal of this presentation will be to review many techniques that have to do with maps. Here we've only seen 2 techniques, but there are actually many, many more. And if your boss ever asks you, draw me a map, then hopefully you have the right knowledge, the right techniques, and the right principle so that you can answer the question in the best way. So I will not have time to take questions, but if you have questions, I will be very happy for you to come and see me at the booth. I will be at the booth at the Tableau booth, obviously. All right, how does it sound? Let's start. So what I want you to do is, having a look, there's a lot of examples of maps, mainly about Australia, so I want you to enjoy those maps. It's a good time to relax, I guess, if you're not on the stage, like me. All right, so hopefully the click should work now. Yeah, so we start with the field map, which is also called Choropet map. So actually, my coach said that I was not saying the word field correctly because of my French accent. So it's not the field like the thing on the ground. It's actually the field like something that is filled, right? So I guess you got the idea. So what is a field map? It's something like that. You've got a surface, and then you will color that surface with a measure. So for instance, here what I'm doing, the color will be the percentage of family with the income is more than $4,000 a week, sorry. So they are supposedly rich family. So no surprise here, you can see from the map here that most of the rich family are living in the North Shore and maybe in the inner city, but the west part of Sydney are a bit more poorer. There's not so many rich family there. So there's a number of conditions that should be met, or which are better to have when you build this kind of map. The first of one, maybe it's obvious, is that your data needs to be attached to a surface area. So what does it mean by that? Obviously, if you got custom, so if you do use shapefile or if you use polygon, you will be good. And if you want to use the geolocalization functionality of Tableau, that will work, as long as you got country, states, LGA, which are actually county in Tableau, and postal code. Because all of these things, Tableau do know the polygons around them. On the other side, or on the other end, if you only have in your file one single lat and launch by area, or if you want to plot a city using the Tableau geolocalization, this will not work, because basically Tableau will only know the dot and will not know the area of it. So don't use that for field map. Second thing is that your data should be standardized. What do we mean by that? So we'll just take an example here. This map is showing the crime in the scene area. And it shows the number of incidents or the number of crimes in each of the suburbs. And as you can tell here, the CBD is red. Why is that? So it's because obviously that's the place where you've got the most incidents in the greater scene area. But does it mean that it's very dangerous to go in the city, in the CBD at night? Maybe not, because obviously there are many more people living in the CBD than there are in other places like Mosman, for instance. So the bottom line is you should standardize the data, which means that you should use things like rates, percentages, or data per capita. So all these examples are good ones. The one on the left is a bad one. Next thing I want to talk about is that you need to have a look at, you need to try to classify your data. So what do I mean by that? So this map here, if my clip is working, is showing the GDP per capita in the different countries around the world, which is actually the default Tableau datasets, or one of the examples. So if you try to do that, you have something like this. So I don't know how good the quality of the screen is, but what you probably see is just different shade of green. So it's very hard to tell anything from that thing. So how can we try to fix this? The first thing you can do is try to replace and say, I don't want to have an infinite number of colors. I just want maybe to have 5 colors. So we step the thing. When you do this, it's maybe slightly better. Maybe you can see that Africa and Asia is mostly light green, and there are some places like the US or Australia, which is dark green. So it's better, but still not perfect, right? Next thing you can do is you can change the palette. So you can use a diverging palette. So for instance, here you do orange-blue diverging. So now it's maybe better, right? You can see quite distinctly 3 colors: the dark red, the orange, and the white, right? But if you have a look at the legend on the right-hand side, you can see that there are actually more colors. We should have some light blue and some dark blue. So if you have a look at this, it seems like pretty much every country in the world is poor. Right? So what's going on? Is Tableau wrong? So to answer that question, what you need to do is this. You need to have a look at the distribution of your data using this kind of histogram. So as you can see here, this is, it doesn't follow like a standard, what's the name? It's not a bell curve, essentially. This is what you call right skewed. It means that pretty much all of the countries are actually less than 25K. And there's a few countries in between 25K and 50K, and very few which are above. So see, that's why we were not able to see the blue ones, and we were able to see a few white ones, but not so much blue ones. So how can you fix that issue? The idea will be, instead of having this, which is like distribution, what you want to have is to use percentiles. So you want to have a color for the 20 top richest country, another color for the next 20%, and so on and so forth. So how do you do that in Tableau? It's actually super easy, as most things in Tableau, as you know, right? So what do you do here? What you need to do is basically, instead of putting the measure, you will put the rank of that measure using table calcs. So just do that. Maybe the next thing you need to do maybe is to reverse the scale, so that you want to have the blue one, like the one which are the first one as blue as opposed to red, and that's it. So then what you've got is something like this. So now it's pretty clear. You can clearly see that we have rich country, the dark blue ones, and that includes France and Australia, and you got like poor country like the red ones. Sounds good? Easy, right? So the other thing you can do, you can actually do it manually if you want. So what you can do, you can create some calculation, and you can say I want to use some thresholds. So I want to put my own thresholds, and I want to define what it means for a country to be very poor, to be average, or to be rich. So you just have to be this kind of calculation. So what's the advantage compared to the previous method? Is that you can actually use the legend to make the selection. So if you can, or the highlighter, I should say, you can just click on poor, and all the countries which are poor are showing up. Very easy to do. And also what you can do is that you can re-choose all the colors you want. So it's pretty flexible. But there's still one issue with the field map, is that the smaller places can be overlooked. So let me ask you a question. Which is the richest country? Can anybody tell here by having a look at the map? I don't have Tableau socks to give, but you can still give it a try. What's that? That's a good try, but it's not Luxembourg. Which one? Liechtenstein, good one too? Yeah, it's not that one. So the way to do it using the map will be to move your mouse around, and then you can use, as you know, the tooltips. And for instance, here you may have seen that Norway was a bit darker than the other one, but Norway is actually only fourth, right? So the best way to get your answer is actually to create a bar chart, this boring bar chart, right? And as you can see here, Monaco, Luxembourg, Bermuda, and Norway, and then you've got a smaller country like Qatar. So all these places are rich, but they are so small, impossible to see them. So bottom line is, what matters is you really want to know which country are the richest, maybe don't use a map, use a bar chart, even if your boss is asking for it. So one way to go around that issue would be to create some what you call X-style maps. The idea here will be to not miss the small areas, and this will be important if you want to use the zone as a filter. So this is a typical example. So I try to avoid US example, but it quite works well with that kind of things. The idea is that every state here is the same size, which is an hexagon, and then it's very easy to color to put the measure on the each of the hexagon. So if you go to a place like this one, I'm not exactly sure what measure is, but the Delaware is the one which has the strongest value. You cannot miss it because it's the same size than the other ones. If you have a look at the map of the US, you will actually see that Delaware is super small. So this is a good solution to some problems. So I don't have time to explain you how to build that, but it's not very hard. And again, if you want to know, just go and see me at the booth. So that was all about for field map. Let's switch to the next one, which is maybe the most obvious one, which is a symbol map. So obviously, the idea here is to use a symbol like a dot to show something. In that example here, what we are showing is the earthquake that has occurred in the Pacific Ocean for the last 100 years. And we are using the size as well as the color to show the magnitude of each earthquake. So as you can see here, it's very easy. You can already see that it follows patterns. Basically, it follows the plates, the tectonic plates. So this is a very good example of using maps for that kind of things. So this symbol maps has a number of advantages. First one, as we said, is that it can be used for points. So you don't need to have a surface. Next one, it doesn't matter what the size is. So even if something is super small, because you have a dot, maybe the dot will be big because measure is big. It can be used for raw data, so you don't have to normalize your data. You can just put like a number of incidents, for instance. And last one, it's very easy to create multiple variables. Yes, because basically we can put together things like shape, the size, as well as the color. So let's talk for that for a minute. So the thing that I talk about is what we call the pre-attentive attributes. So size, shape, and that's our color. We have actually two kinds of color. We've got the color hue, and we've got the color intensity. So the color hue is what you classically call color. So red, green, blue, etc. They are color hue. Color intensity are more like shade of the same color. So like blue, dark blue, and so on. So then depending on what you want to show, some are best than others. So some are better than others. So sometimes you want to show something which is quantitative, which are typically a measure. Sometimes you want to show something which is like a category, which are typically a dimension into Tableau. So for measure, size and color intensity are good. The other one are not so good. For category or dimension, shape and color hue are good, the other one are not so good. So actually, it's good that I see everybody take this picture, because my joke was saying, you can take a picture now before I move to the next slide. Okay. So next thing, we see how to deal with one measure at a time, but what if you want to deal with more than one measure? So we've talked about the first one, symbol map. We'll talk about two other things, dual axis, and then the fin map. So dual axis, the idea is that you put on the same map, like a fin map, along with a symbol map. So for instance here, what I do show is the catchment area for schools, and the color will be measuring the social educational advantage. And then on top of that, I'm putting the schools, and then the size of each bubble will represent the number of students, and then the color will be able to differentiate between primary and secondary school. Okay? So pretty easy to do in Tableau if you know how to do a dual axis. Basically, you need to replicate or to duplicate your latitude, and then you will select the dual axis option. And then on the left-hand side, basically you will see that you are able to have, sorry, I missed my thing. You are able to play along with the mark style, as well as which dimension and which measure you want to use for those. So this technique is quite well known for things like bar chart, but it can also be applied for maps. So this one is probably not as well known, is this concept of bivariate Crow-Pet map. So what you want to do here is that you want to use two measures, and generally you want to do that if you want to see whether there is a correlation between these two measures. So then what you need to do is you need to classify these measures. So we've seen how to do that when we deal with the GDP per capita. Do the same thing here. And recommendation would be to not use more than 3 values for each of the measure. And last, you assign a color for each combination. So what does it mean all that? This map here is showing the correlation between two indexes. The first one is the community socio-educational advantage, which basically shows whether the parents of the students are from a good education and have a good job. The second one tells basically whether people or their parents are primarily speaking something else than English at home. And using this, you can see that if the area is dark, is let's say black, it means that both these things are high. So it means that there's a high correlation, people do not speak English at home, and their parents happen to be from a good background, of good education. On the other hand, if your color is yellow, it means that people are from maybe a low social educational advantage, but their parents do not speak English at home. Make sense? So it's pretty powerful, but as you can see here, maybe it's sometimes a bit hard to understand what it does, and your eyes always have to go back and forth in between the legend and the map. So use with caution, but it's pretty powerful. So we can use the same techniques, but for a different purpose, if we deal with value by alpha map. So the idea here is that you will use the second variable as an opacity mask. So the goal here will be to, so for instance, the example would be to, if you want to factor in the population of the area. So let's have a look at this example. Probably you have seen this kind of map before. These are the results of the election in the US by county. And the red county will be the one where the Republican have won. The blue one will be where the Democrat has won. So if you look at this, it seems like the Republican has smashed it. It's all red, right? But then if you factor in population, and if you say I want to have the small places where there's not so many people in something darker, it will look like this. And now you can tell that there's pretty much as many blues as there is red. Okay, so this technique can be a nice one. Okay, I will finish with a last category of charts, which are the charts and maps that are to show density of data. So we'll see 3 types. First one is the point distribution map, which is basically using the symbol map. So here what we are showing is we are showing the storms that has occurred in Australia for the last 200 years. So what you can see here is that most of that's actually hailstorms. Most of these hailstorms are either on the east coast or the west coast. But that's pretty much it. You cannot say much more than that. It's not very precise. So if you want to have something more precise, what we can use is the density map, which is something which is rather new in Tableau. It's been introduced 2 versions ago, I think. So it will look like this, right? So now you can see that the area where you've got most hailstorms will actually be cities like Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne. And as you can know, you can play along, you can change the color, you can change the vivacity, so you can have something like that. So you can play a bit with that. So it's kind of cool, but there's still one problem with that, is that you can only have one information for one hailstorm at a time. So you cannot tell, having looked at one area, how many storms have been hit there. So the way to do that will be to create what we call square bins. So basically, you split your country into squares of equal size, and then you'll be able to put a measure on the top of it, something like that. So now you can see that this area in orange has had 262 hailstorms along the years, right? So how do you do this? It's pretty easy. Basically, you just need to bin your lat and longe, and one way to do it will be to round them. So again, I will be very fast on that, but if you have questions, I'm happy to help. All right, let's finish with that. So as you know, Tableau is all about innovations. So what I want to show here is like 2 innovations that has been occurred that will come in the next few weeks, which are related to map, and that will probably open what you can do and what you can imagine to do with maps in Tableau. So first one is the curved flight path. Why is it important? Because the Earth is not flat, right? Some people may think that, but so actually, if you put, and so what's the consequence of that is that the shortest path from one point to the other is not necessarily a straight line. So the example would be like that. So if you want to fly from Sydney to Santiago de Chile, you actually have to go very south if you want to minimize, if you don't want to burn lots of fuel. Actually, check this morning on the globe. It's actually true. You have to go south. Try it. You will see. Next thing is about background maps. So there's 2 things. So first of all, the technology has been completely redone. So now it's what we call vector tile technology, and it makes your experience super, super fast. So now you can only browse, you can zoom in, zoom out, etc. And it will be as smooth as if you were using Google Maps. Believe me, you can try it. It's very, very cool. And the second thing is that there are new styles, which will make now be possible to see things which you were not be able to see them before. So let's have a look at the example. So I'll talk about the new style here. So this is a map of Sydney. So probably you can recognize circular archive of people that are living here with the current level of detail. It's okay. You can see a few streets. You can see the Royal Botanical Garden and so on, but it's not that great, isn't it? Look at this now. This is the new map, okay? So now you can see that much more details. You can see more streets. You can even see the building footprints. Right, isn't it? So in terms of style, we have added new styles. So this one was actually here before, the dark one. But in addition to that, you got one to have the roads, which are the top right. You can have satellite view directly in the tool. You don't have to connect to any map services or things like that. And the last one is about the outdoor, which look like the same here because Sydney there's not like so many outdoor things. But you can have like things like contour lines and stuff like that. So it's very good if you do that for, let's say, Royal National Park, for instance. All right. So I'm aware that I'm probably over time already, and I bombard you with information. But if you have to remember 4 things, these will be your 4 things. The first thing is that your maps are not always the best visualization type. So what matters is the rank. Maybe a bar chart is better, even if it's not as sexy as a map. Second one is that if you use FinMap, you should try to avoid to use non-normalized data. Don't put something where the size of the state or the population of the state will impact your numbers. Third one, always think about what are the best presentative attributes. Remember, color, size, and shape. And last one, have a look at the distribution of your data to use color effectively. All right, a lot of information here. So what I would like you to do now is raise your hand if you have learned at least one technique that you think you may use for your use case, and one mistake that you've been doing for many, many types of visualization. That's good. So most people have raised hands here. So what I would like you to do is, when you're back at the office, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe next week, whatever, have a look at all the maps you've been building and try to have the critical eyes and to see how you can do something better than now. Thanks a lot.